Hey everybody, welcome back to the Monthly Sync. We're on season 2 now, which is amazing. And today is all about efficiency in customer success. If we've not met before, I'm Tash, I'm VP of Customer Growth at Hook and host of this webinar. And I'm joined today by an incredible guest, Mike Gadd. Mike, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you and about your role.
I'm the CS director for EMEA and APAC in India at Singular. We're a mobile and web measurement platform working with marketing agencies around the globe. Efficiency is a big topic for us. Happy to be here today.
Nice, thank you. Today is all about efficiency. You're going to hear a ton from Mike and a bit from me too, but we also want to hear from you all. And so we're going to make sure we save some time at the end of this webinar for questions. Please do write them in the Q&A and we'll get to as many as we can. But we picked efficiency today because it seems to be on every CS leader, every CSM's mind right now. And there's a number of reasons behind that, right? There's a lot of pressure in the market. There's a big focus on profitability, on doing more with less or doing more with the same, on driving revenue. And I think there's many things contributing to that. AI is definitely one of them. And I think every CS leader is thinking about, okay, I need to be more efficient, or a CSM is thinking I need to be more efficient. But the big question is how? What do I actually do here? Where can I really be more efficient as a CSM, or where can I really make my team more efficient as a CS leader without compromising on results and without compromising on customer experience? And so this is what we are here to chat about today. I always think when it comes to any good strategy, you're trying to be more efficient or you're trying to do X, Y, and Z. The best place to start is, what's the goal? What am I trying to achieve? And so, Mike, tell me a little bit about, for you, as you think about efficiency, what's your goal? What does that mean to you?
So I think the overall objective at Singular is, we've been scaling really well for a number of years. And I think when you're doing that, you can't just keep throwing sort of bodies at customers to try and always make sure that you're servicing them in the best possible way. Just because you've added 100 new customers doesn't mean you've got the same amount of CSMs that are going to come through and keep servicing those customers. And I think what we've seen in the industry quite a lot is companies that just hire and hire and hire to try and sort of meet those demands of those customers. And then we see like these huge layoffs like a year or two down the line, either because they've not reached the growth target or they've realized they need to then make efficiency cuts and things like that. I think that we don't want to do that. So what we try and do is we want to grow really well, but we want to grow in a sustainable and efficient way. That means we're not having to do these like sweeping cuts in the future or anything like that, and keep that really good, solid team without having to grow too exponentially sort of team-wise. We'd rather just do that on the customers. That's a really key one for us. And we split it down to 3 main focus areas. So we look at individual efficiency. So actually, like, what are the standards we expect at Singular? We do have quite high standards for our CSMs, like technically and commercially. And that's supported by like hiring practices, our training, and sort of really sort of in-depth performance management as well. And then we go into prioritization and process and technology efficiency as well.
Amazing. And by the way, I want to dig into these 3. So thank you so much for sharing that. When you're thinking about efficiency, and it sounds like your goal is service your growing customer base without scaling your headcount at the same rate. And your reasons behind that, by the way, will resonate with every single person on this call. So thanks for being so open with that. When you think about that, are you thinking at all about holding yourself accountable to a certain level of results at the same time, or a certain level of customer experience at the same time, alongside not hiring at the same rate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really interesting is, I try and go to as many webinars or events as possible and sort of to hear from other CS leaders. And I think one of the things that's really changed over the last few years is people don't talk anymore about like, should CS own a revenue number or whatever, because it's just not even a conversation anymore. I think, yes, we have a revenue number. Yes, we're responsible for upsells. Yes, we're responsible for renewals, because that's what CS does. But that means that you're very accountable to your execs, because you have a number that you have to try and hit. And I think you have to do that with not necessarily all the resources you always need. So there is no choice now but to be really efficient, because you don't necessarily have all the resources that you'd love with huge teams and huge massive tech stacks and things like that. So you have to learn to be really efficient in a sustainable way to hit the numbers that you've got.
I love that. I love that you said no one's talking about CS owning a revenue number anymore. Just me, Mike. I'm still banging that drum. I'm still telling everybody that will listen. I want to dig into the three different parts of your framework and how you think about it. The first one is really interesting to me, which is individual efficiency. How do you create that culture within your CS team that they should be looking at their own efficiency? And then how do you, I guess, measure that as a leader? Interested in more color there.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the first things I think is if you're going to have a culture of efficiency, you need a culture of transparency because it doesn't just work top down of like the senior management saying like this is the way we're going to do things and everyone just runs off and does it because it just doesn't work. So one of the things we make sure that we do is our CSMs come to the table with suggestions as much as possible, and they're saying like I think this is going to make a change, or I think this is inefficient, this is a pain, I hate doing this job because like it's a waste of my time. We try and sort of get that feedback as much as possible so we can make those changes. And then also we do expect a lot of our CSMs. Like we put quite a lot on them, as I'm sure many management teams do, and have a lot of CSMs. But what's really important is trying to make a culture where your CSMs can turn around and say, you've got to stop there. Like I can't take any more on right now. And if you've got that trust in your team, then actually when they do say, this is my limit, you kind of trust that. And then you know, okay, I need to either find more resource or move some resource around so that you can balance it. But I think what's important is having that two way. So you're not underutilizing your CSMs, but you're also not burning them out at the same time.
Yeah, amazing. And it's interesting you mentioned there that you create a culture where your CS team can bring suggestions on we could be doing this more efficiently or we could be doing this differently. I also know that you're quite big on process, which I'm sure you're going to talk to us about in a little bit. How do you balance that? Every CSM wanting to go do their own thing and find their own efficiency versus translating things into a process so that everybody is reaping the rewards of that.
Yeah, so I think the key is no one does it just for themselves. So if you're going to make an improvement, it's an improvement for at least your region, if not the whole team. And that means that actually any sort of benefits that are generated from that are felt by everybody and not just one individual. We did used to be quite siloed as regions. So we used to have sort of different regions with sort of slightly different processes and things like that. And we've really tried to sort of bring that together. And we give each CSM a different responsibility to have. So we have a CSM who is, as well as their sort of day job as being a CSM, they're in charge of making sure that we're top of the G2 review charts. And so every month they're like pushing that with the team. They're making sure that everyone's getting the reviews in, and that we hit that target. And they do that on a global scale. So actually you haven't got someone in every team or in every region or whatever trying to get this done. You've got one person making it work for everybody. And we try and do that for working with product, working with marketing team, etc., to try and make ourselves as a department fit in better with other departments within the company.
And when you say every CSM, if you've got a suggestion and it's worked, it needs to be an improvement for the whole region as a minimum. How are you facilitating that? Is that the CSM brings the idea to you and you talk about it in a team meeting, or you turn it into a process, or do they do that themselves now because of this culture that you've created?
So some of it is through our review process. So we do regular manager reviews, and these are in-depth manager reviews. So like 2 hours of like the manager, just mainly it's the manager asking questions of the CSM. So it's looking at like what's working, what's not working, what can we improve? And then one of the key things of that is from the outcomes is actually some of the responsibility is on the CSM to go and fix it. So it's like, you know what, if you don't think this works, like see if you can come up with a solution. Like what resources do you need? Who do I need to connect you with in the business? And then see if you can come up with a process for the team to be able to improve on that and to build it from there.
Amazing. The second piece in your three-part framework, I think, was prioritization, right? Tell us a little bit more about how you help your team prioritize and be laser focused on what they need to do.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you're efficient, it means you're not wasting time on any customers that you can't waste time on effectively. And so we're really strict on prioritization with the team, and that's got to be around value. And again, if we go back to our targets now, like we are generally owning a number, and so if it's got to be like, is it going towards growth? So are you talking to a customer who is potentially going to grow, and you can develop that customer, or is it one that you can actually rescue some potential contraction or churn. And I think that point is a really key one because I think as CSMs, we try and run around saving everything. And one of the things we've really done is actually change that to if it is some customers will just churn and it's horrible, we hate it, but sometimes customers will churn. And if that is that customer, then actually the best thing you can do is leave it nicely with the customer, but actually not invest too much more time in it because you haven't got the resources to do that. Actually, what's key is finding which can you turn around. And so identifying it early is really important. And then actually being able to come up with a plan and say, is this achievable? Can we save this customer? And if the answer is no,
Yeah.
we deprioritize it and we move on to one that we can save.
And I think it's so freeing for everybody involved, right? To only focus on what I would call influenceable churn, because otherwise you do just chase your tail on, like, I know there's a risk here, but maybe I haven't got a whole lot to do, but I really need to hit my number. And so off I go to do that. How do you build that into your process, this piece around, okay, we prioritize which accounts are at risk, where our growth potentially is. How do you, as a team, talk through what's influenceable and what's not? Is that done at like a CSM to manager level? Is it done at a business level? Again, maybe add some color there.
Yeah, so and actually, it's one of the reasons we're using Hook. So we want to have better prioritization of that by using the signals, etc., to get that influence. We tried using health scores. It had hit or miss results. It wasn't always working brilliantly, but everyone could had a view of that. So across the different departments, different levels of everyone in the team could see what was going on with the customers. But we also will have a red accounts call for every region every week, and that's got our CCO is on there, our CTO is on there, our VP of sales, as well as the CS team. And you bring those accounts which have the biggest chance of growing or saving to that forum, and you have maybe 10 minutes as a CSM to present it, and you say these are the ones I need the most help with, or these are the ones I need the most guidance on, and then we use that as a forum to try and sort of find the best way of saving or growing those customers.
Okay, amazing. So we've had individual efficiency, we've had prioritization. Maybe tell us a little bit about what you do and what you create around processes and technology to help you and your team be more efficient.
Sure. I mean, a personal one for me is my honest opinion is a spreadsheet is never efficient. So whenever I see like someone will be like, oh, I'm like tracking this in a spreadsheet. And I'm like, okay, it's not connected to anything. It's manual. It's definitely taking you way more time than it needs to. And then as soon as anyone makes a change in our CRM system or something like that, like it's suddenly out of date. So I try and kill off as many spreadsheets as possible. That's like my personal goal for efficiency within the team. But also we try and find as many areas as we can that are taking time or effort that can be easily automated or replicated more easily through a process. I think one example is like a low tech sort of example, but we realized that we were having too many meetings. I mean, I mentioned we have like a red accounts meeting that we have, but we were having too many like internal meetings. And what you found is you had like someone would be chasing sales, who would be chasing someone in management, et cetera, like to try and work out what's going on with certain accounts. So we have central repositories, whether it's our sales tool, our CS tool, et cetera. But also we've just even simple things like having a Slack channel for renewals. And it's just the communication on renewals happens like in that Slack channel, rather than it being like a conversation between the seller and the CSM, which then needs to be replicated to someone else and someone else. And it means you just have everything in one place. So that made a big difference. And then like it was always going to come up in this conversation. Like we are implementing more and more AI tools to try and help us to be more efficient and sort of bring that into our processes. Because yeah, I mean it's been huge just in the last 12 months what you've been able to achieve compared to what you could do like a year ago. But it's accelerating at a crazy rate in terms of what you can actually do now.
Amazing. I have a couple of questions on what you've just mentioned. So this piece around turning meetings into Slack channels, I find really interesting. I definitely have way too many internal meetings, and I'm probably guilty of creating internal meetings. If you're turning a meeting like a renewal conversation into a Slack channel, who has the accountability of ensuring that the right things get discussed? Like, does that sit with your CSM to say, hey, this is on you, like we don't want to have a meeting, but make sure that this level of conversation happens in the Slack channel, or do you sit that accountability elsewhere?
Yeah, so it depends who, like what the process is. Like there's like we have something for onboarding, we have something for renewals, etc. But for renewals, it's generally the CSM who is responsible for it, and so they know they need to flag it, and they need to have the information in there. And we've got some automations to make it easier. Um, but then and that's fine for business as usual. And then it's everything that's outside of that, then you would escalate it to a different forum. And so it gets rid
Okay.
of maybe 80% of the stuff that would maybe make a lot of noise in the meetings otherwise, that can just be handled really quickly and easily. And then the 20% is the bit you can focus in on.
Yeah, nice. Okay, and then my other question is, it sounds like you have a really good system for reviewing what's taking time and then implementing processes that are going to help you speed up. Do you always implement every process globally? Do you allow for local flex and local nuances? And if so, when do you allow for that flex?
So we try and go global first. So in terms of the process we'll generally have like a test dummy region. So you'll have a region that will test it first and see if that process is working. What are the lessons learned? Does it need any tweaking, etc.? And then we try and roll it out globally. And then you will find for certain regions that you need to make additional sort of adjustments to make it work for that region. Like we had an example with our growth tier. Where we split out enterprise and growth CSMs because they are very different roles. And previously we'd been trying to sort of have CSMs who were sort of doing the whole sort of range of different customers, and it just wasn't working very well. So we split that out, but APAC hadn't made that change to the global system. And we made that change this year where we split it out. We had growth CSMs and enterprise CSMs. And we implemented the full global solution that we had everywhere else to the APAC region. Now, it worked on the whole, but there was areas where it didn't. Certain things around like we needed the CSM involved earlier in the onboarding. We needed to make allowances for the fact that in China they needed some WeChat groups. And again, going back to prioritization, definitely not all, but some
Yeah.
customers needed a WeChat group. And so we made those adjustments, and actually we had the best Q2, I think so Q3, sorry, was the best quarter we've ever had in the APAC growth tier, which is amazing. And that was from like implementing a global process and then tweaking it slightly just so it works for that region.
Really cool. Really cool. Thanks for sharing. Okay, well, I love your three-part framework. So individual efficiencies, ruthlessly prioritize based on what's going to drive the outcomes that you need to drive, and then constantly review what's taking you time. How can I build a process to automate, or how can I leverage technology to automate and to go quicker? It sounds like you guys are doing such a great job over there of creating more of a like culture or a mindset of efficiency. And so I'm interested for leaders listening, have you got any other tips and tricks on how you've fostered that kind of culture over at Singular and how other people could maybe replicate that?
I think having it led from your team is a really big one. I think if it's not led from your team and you're not getting that feedback, I mean, you may get feedback that you don't agree with, and in which case sometimes you have to stick to your gut sometimes and be like, actually, this is the right process. But I think having that two-way conversation is really important with the team. I had a really interesting talk last week where this guy said, try and get your team to make one experiment every month. And I'm implementing that
Oh,
with my team now, where it's like one experiment which you think can either help you grow, help you to save churn, or make you more efficient. And if everyone does that, maybe 1 in 5 work, and you're going to make things better for your organization. So
yeah, I
that's what
love
we're going
that.
to start trying. Yeah. So my 2026 goal is everyone does that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. But yeah, and then I would say tie it back to the number, like because if you're trying to get more budget for a tool that you want to implement, or you realize actually you have really maxed out your team and you need to get that extra headcount. If you can demonstrate to your exec team that you have absolutely got your team as efficient as possible and there's no wastage in that team, that whole conversation is much easier. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
that would be the biggest recommendation in terms of managing up is if you can prove your efficiency, budget talks are much easier.
Yeah, amazing. This experiment idea is wonderful. I'm interested because I think other people will be thinking the same thing. Are you saying, hey, it's an experiment using only existing tech? Are you giving them a bit of budget to go play with and say, hey, go mess with this, like maybe user-led PLG tool to see if it can do that thing? How do you run that? Do you put a framework around it?
So we haven't assigned any budget to it yet. What we would generally do is actually, and it almost seems counterintuitive, but start manual. So basically make it like really rough and manual just to like see if that works. And then if it does, then we can look at trying to improve it and automate it from there. So
Nice.
yeah, like office hours, like mini webinars for set small groups of customers, all of that sort of thing. We're
Yeah.
quite happy to sort of test it first and then improve on that process if it works.
Amazing. And on a similar vein, one of the things that we're doing here at Hook is we are running a company-wide hackathon. So it's not just customer success, it's everybody in the company, and we're grouped into teams and we're matching CSMs with engineers, with salespeople, with folks that work in ops, and everyone's in a mini team. And they've been given the task of building something that helps us with internal efficiency, and they're being rated on how ambitious the idea is and how much like ROI it's going to bring back to the business or how much time it's going to save the business. And what's really nice is just by creating a mini competition with a little incentive at the end, is it's got everybody thinking differently about everything we do across Hook internally. And we've had the engineering team running a little lunch and learn, talking us through what's an API and how do you use different pieces of tech just to get a bit kind of like scrappy and go build things and try doing this yourself. And so I think there are like lots and lots of little ideas out there that help you create that culture.
Yeah.
I have one last question, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. So if anybody does have any questions to ask Mike, please throw them in the Q&A now. We talked about kind of like leaders creating that mindset, and you said, hey, it's great to lead with a team. If there's anyone who's listening who's a CSM, what's the easiest place for them to start? If they're saying, hey, okay, I want it to start with me and I want to be more efficient, where should they begin?
I think having a really honest assessment of what is taking you loads of time, what do you feel is a waste of time, and what do you hate doing? I hate admin, so I genuinely hate it with a passion. So I want to do everything I can to get not do admin. I will try and automate. I will try and do as much as I can to avoid it. So I think try and find those things that you know will make a big difference to you. And if you can demonstrate that to your team and to your leadership, then you can roll it out across the rest of the team. And I think be vocal with it as well. I think if you're in an organization where people aren't keen on you being vocal about efficiencies that you can make, it's a difficult organization to be part of. So I would say try and make sure you're in that environment where you can be vocal and you can try and sort of push those efficiencies out to the team.
Yeah, I love that. There's just so much to go at now to your point around admin. By the way, I don't know if anyone likes admin. Maybe. But there's so much to go at now in terms of just removing all of that off your plate. Like the point of a CSM is to spend time with our customers and to spend time on the highly impactful activities that are linked to value, that are going to drive renewal and growth conversations. And so there's so much opportunity to take some of that off the plate. Mike, thank you so much for sharing some of your wisdom today and for sharing your kind of like 3-point playbook. We've got one question that I'm going to go to. So Finn's asked a question. He said, thanks for this, really interesting. For efficiency via segmentation, what was your cutoff for splitting between growth and enterprise customer success? Are you thinking ARR, headcount, or otherwise? Anything you feel comfortable sharing there, Mike?
So we go by ARR because it's a fairly easy way to sort of get your initial split. But then actually what we do is we allow our account executives to promote companies up. So if they have a company where they think, actually, this is definitely going to grow, they can promote it up, but they only get so many slots. So if say they've already got sort of 3 on a CSM which have been sort of promoted up to the enterprise tier, you've got to then sort of rank them to be like, okay, well, which ones do stay and which ones do you have to sort of put right size back into the right tier to be managed. So I think that's a really key one. And once someone's in a tier, doesn't mean they have to stay in a tier, because actually like some have great opportunity at the start and then maybe that falls away and then others can come through. So I think that's really key, is to keep analyzing it as well to make sure you've got it right.
Amazing. We did something similar when I was part of the CS team at LinkedIn, and it was like a flagging concept exactly the same as you've mentioned. I think it's a really nice way to just align with your sales team and show that whilst perhaps our targets are a little bit different, in some businesses they're very aligned, in some businesses they aren't, that we understand their targets too, and we understand that they're trying to drive revenue for the business, and we're happy to flex because we understand CS's impact on their ability to drive that revenue and drive that growth. So I think that that's a really great tip. Question from Lucy. Prioritization based on value is crucial as we continue to manage larger books of customers. How do you work with your sales team to set expectations around how customer success will work with them based on the customer's value to your organization?
So I think a really key one here is actually like bringing, and I know again, many talks is like, oh, CS and sales, like how do they get along? How do they work well together and things like that? But I think if as a CSM, if you can help show value to your sellers by showing insight that's going to drive up sales, by helping to like close that renewal, it's just going to help them and things like that, then I think that's a good start. And then I think we make sure that our sellers and our CSMs are talking to each other. So when that sort of customer is first coming in, we're making sure we're fully aligned on what the customer's KPIs are. So like, what does the customer actually want to achieve with Singular? And then we can work on that together. And our sellers, by the way, are part of the renewal process as well. So they bring the business in, and then they will continue to have some involvement there as well, which makes a big difference.
And I think that talking to each other starts with us as well as leaders, right? CS leader having a really good relationship with the sales leader and having an honest conversation about what's the targets that we need to hit and how we're going to get there together. And both sides showing that, hey, we're on the same team and I'm here, like I've got your back, you need to have my back. And so let's make a plan and let's show the team that we're in this together. And I think that fosters that kind of environment where your CSMs and your salespeople want to do the same.
Yeah. 100%.
All right. I think that's all of the questions. Mike, you've been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. To everybody who's joined, thank you so much for joining. We are running another webinar in around about a month's time. And actually, Mike, you touched on this, which is the risk process. I think there's a lot to go at in terms of how do you identify risk, but also how do you manage and mitigate that risk? And how do you hold the team accountable to do all of those things? So a great topic in a month's time. Please look out for that. Thank you so much for joining today. And a massive thank you to you, Mike. We really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.